Welcome back to it, guys. Tobago Thursdays continues with talks of the budget, and this time we'll be hearing from the IDA as they give their budget response. And to do so, we are joined by the political leader, Dr. Denise Tsoiafat-Angus. Good morning and welcome to the Now Morning Show.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
It is necessary because as budget talks continue, Tobago's perspective is certainly one that we'd like to explore. And while we have chatted with you before in terms of expectations initially, just to appraise those who may not have had or been privy to that conversation, what were your initial hopings ahead of the budget being shared this year?
Well, I would have hoped that we saw a clear pathway, for taking us out of the economic crisis that this country is in. Every single day we continue to have less and less available forex in the country, and it is stifling persons in the private sector, their businesses, in terms of going forward. And when I listened to the budget, my initial experience was one of extreme punishment, sitting for 5.5 hours to get through it. And, of course, there's the neglect for Tobago's needs. But you also saw manipulation of the citizens of this country. And at the end of it, I felt that the country was totally lost at sea. And, why I say that is the fact that if you are out in a boat, you could have the nicest boat ever. But if you do not have a compass that you're working with, then that boat would be lost at sea. And the compass I refer to comes out of the title where it says forging a path to prosperity. How are we measuring that prosperity? And so, we heard from the minister that the country is growing, things are looking rosy, but yet we don't know how he has gotten to that assessment. Because one of the key pieces that we should have as part of that budget that links every part to it is the Vision 2030. And that was missing.
Okay.
And what does the Vision 2030 say? Vision 2030 said that this country by 2030 is supposed to be a developed nation. And there are key indicators for that. So over the last 62 years, the GDP per capita has grown from about $4,000 to $17. And this means that, let's break it down, the average income earned per person per year is $17,000 in this country. In order to attain developed status, this number needs to reach $50,000 per person per year by 2020. So we could see that from his projections, the government is projecting a growth rate of 1.9% in 2024. That's what they had. And therefore, if you really extrapolate those numbers, you see that there's no way we're going to meet that target. And therefore, if the Vision 2030 goals were referenced in the budget, the government would have to admit their failure in order to meet their own mandate that they created for themselves.
Dr. Tsoiafat-Angus, I want to break it down further then, because fine, we will set targets and as you are saying, they have not accomplished them. Let's talk about what we can do.
The mark.
Miss the mark, fair. So let's talk about what we can do with what we do have, because what we saw initially in terms of aspirations or hopes for particular things in the budget, there would have been particular sectors and areas of focus. Not in terms of those larger goals, as you're mentioning, we've missed that grand mark, but in smaller increments, let's talk about some of the allocations that were given to specific areas and what can be done or hope to see change in those particular instances. Because we do have values. We know Sorry?
Mm-hmm.
So we do have values. We do know that on the ground, for example, citizens were very focused, for example, in the areas of health and in terms of crime. For the IDA's goals, can we get into more specifics of what particular ministries or industries you wanted to see a little bit more focus on and where the inadequacies are there?
Well, you see, it's all connected, you know.
Absolutely.
And if we don't have that target and are clear that that is the target we're going after, we're going to be going around in circles. Because this country has to have initiatives that projects a growth rate of 20% to even meet that target. So just waiting for the oil savior in 2027 will not work. And we need to look at bigger ideas, bigger initiatives, something such as selling capital services like our education system.
Right.
Our education system should be there, and I'm talking at the level of perhaps UE, where we are attracting a number of people to come in and be a part of that institution and being able to export from our education services. Even the fact of healthcare and going down the road of seriously thinking about medical tourism. So those are some of the areas that we can look at. Financial services. But the smaller initiatives that we have is keeping us back from really producing at the growth rate we need to be at to take this country forward. And so if we go to Tobago, Tobago's allocation was cut by 95 million when you look at the development program. The recurrent program does not deal with the development of the island. And so cutting the development budget by 95 million says to us that you really do not understand what it takes to take the island forward. And that, that statement that the minister made about if Trinidad does well, then Tobago does well, that doesn't hold, what are you really trying to say about that, inside of that statement, that we will always be dependent on Trinidad? Why don't we say when Tobago does well, the country does well? And as such, you put the major investments in Tobago such that the country can also benefit from Tobago's development. But
then,
not
Doctor, let's talk about some of those developments that have received funds, because we do know that there was some, outside of the THA budgetary allocation, we would have seen the airport terminal, for example, see an additional 400 million. We have the Roxborough Fire Station and a number of initiatives that have received additional funding. So that in terms of the additional funding Tobago received, it was over 678.5 million. In terms of, yes, some sort of reduction, figures are allocated to other projects for development. So can we focus a little bit on what we can see happening as a result of this? Because there were allocations that were made to other projects.
Yes, I hear you loud and clear. And why is it that the Tobago House of Assembly, which is responsible for the development of Tobago, gets $205 million, yet other government agencies outside of Tobago get $678 million to develop projects inside of Tobago, and without further conversation with the people of Tobago, because the minister stated that, excuse me, he is going to be building a hotel in Buku. He couldn't even pronounce the name, but he's going to be building a hotel in Buku. Has he consulted with the people of Tobago, with the people of Buku, in terms of, this hotel? I am sure the THA has never heard of it except inside of the budget. And we're talking about process, okay? You cannot continue to disrespect the people of Tobago, feel as if you know what is best for Tobago, and just come in there and do it without the appropriate consultation that is necessary to take the people along with you. We are not against development. We are against the process being used in terms of how this government feels they want to develop Tobago.
So what I'm hearing is that there is the opportunity or the willingness at the very least to have the consultation, because now the allocations are there. Let's at least talk about how we will use it going forward. Is that what I'm hearing, Dr. Tsoiafat?
No, what you're hearing is even before that, you need to have consultations with the people of Tobago in terms of how things are done. I mean, we've had lands vested in the Tobago House of Assembly for years, and all of a sudden you're seeing special purpose companies by the government taking back these lands and stating that they could develop these lands without the involvement of with the people of Tobago.
So
that's where the danger lies.
Granted, the conversation being post-budget because it has been released, what is the plan moving forward then? Now that we do have, so yes, reduced figures, we will dispute the numbers, but in terms of having reduced figures, there still needs to be things done. So moving forward, now that the budget has been shared, what would the IDA like to see happen next?
Well, the IDA has to see that the Tobago House of Assembly will meet with the people of Tobago. They failed in not even meeting with the people of Tobago prior to the budget being done. And we have had meetings with communities across the island. And the people in the communities want to be involved in the process. You can't march in there and tell people what you want to do in their backyards without engaging them in a conversation. And that is why constitutional reform was so important to us, and it is very disappointing that this government has again shown that they're into mamagaing the people, because you went through a whole process of constitutional reform, but you have not put any monies in the budget to continue that constitutional reform process and implement any of the initiatives that have been in there. So it begs the question, were you really serious about having constitutional reform on the table when you called for it and commissioned that committee? Because if we go through the constitutional reform and take some of those recommendations into implementation, then it will be natural and predictable and consistent, engage communities, engage the people in communities in terms of a process of consultation,
right,
such that they can continue to be a voice in how governments implement initiatives, not just in Tobago, but also in Trinidad.
Absolutely. So consultation is the name of the game. Ultimately, a bit more of that needs to happen, and the funding behind that is something that you saw seriously lacked in budget allocations towards Tobago. I feel as if we can continue this conversation quite a bit, but time doesn't permit it. So if we were to say, perhaps leave persons with a thought from the IDA, that is, as to what we can look forward to now that the budget has been released, what would that be?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. You dropped out a bit.
Essentially, what we're going to see moving forward from the IDA, now that we know what we're working with, how we plan to work to make Tobago the best little island on the globe.
Well, the idea is not in administration as yet. That is up to the current administration of the Tobago House of Assembly. But the idea will be on the ground, meeting with the people and educating the people about their rights and the powers that they should be demanding for themselves and what they should be holding their leaders accountable for. And basically, just letting the people know the time has come that you have to stop allowing yourself to be manipulated by these administrations.
We appreciate that, and we will check in with you a little bit later on as we continue budget talks here on The Now. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.